Good morning, everybody. It's Becky with New Hampshire Audubon. And I want to wish everybody a happy Halloween coming up on Saturday. And you'll notice that I've got a costume going on. Oh, I'll tell you about that in a minute. Let me see if I can just get myself going on my phone so I can see your comments. All right, let's take just a moment to do that. Okay, there we go. All right. Well, I'm here to answer your questions and to talk about some of the things going on. And I always love to get comments so that I know that I'm coming through to everybody, that you can see me and hear me. So let me know if you're out there and let me know if I look okay and sound okay. Thank you very much. There we go. All right. Hi, Jeff. Thanks. Sounds like I'm doing okay. So, as I said, happy Halloween. It's Becky from New Hampshire Audubon, and I am in costume today. So I want you to guess what my costume is. So Halloween is the time when creatures of the wild come to life in New Hampshire Audubon's enchanted forest. But this year, because of COVID-19, we aren't having our enchanted forest. So I'm bringing you one of those creatures come to life today in the form of my costume. And I want to show you that I have wings. Let's see, can you see the wing? And that I have I've got blue back, blue head, a reddish belly, and then it goes to white down below. See my lower white belly. So that should give you a clue, if I flap my wings, that I am a bird. All right. So does anybody? Oh, somebody's already got it. All right. Hi, Candy. Hi, Susan. Victoria. Yes, I am a bluebird and I'm an eastern bluebird. So let's talk a minute about eastern bluebirds because they're actually beautiful birds. And at one time they were quite scarce in the state. We think maybe it was because of pesticides being used, particularly DDT, but also the disappearance of their nesting locations. They're cavity nesters. And when there were big field areas, they used to have wooden fence posts that there could actually be cavities in. And then there were old apple trees and things like that that would have great cavities. And then at one point, the field started growing over and wooden fence posts weren't being used. And so cavities disappeared. And then we also had pesticides being used. But probably starting in the 1960s to 70s, there was an effort to put up bluebird boxes. We banned DDT, and there have been a resurgence in bluebirds. And so now it's actually quite common to see them in the state. And they're even sometimes wintering over. So bluebirds like big open field areas. So I have a little small yard with trees around it, and it's not going to be a good place for bluebirds. But if you've got a bigger field area or you're adjacent to a field area, it can be a great place for bluebirds to nest. And they need a nest box or cavity of some kind. And it's also a good idea when you put up a nest box, if you have it on a pole, to put a predator guard on the pole. And there are even some places that have what are called bluebird trails. And they're boxes placed every, I think it's maybe 100 feet apart, something like that, in appropriate habitat. And you can have multiple pairs of bluebirds then nesting in your field. And part of the reason it's important to put up a predator guard is that once something like raccoon climbs a pole, gets a nest, and learns that that's a potential feeding spot, it keeps coming back over and over and over again in each year. So you want to put predator guards on the pole. You want to have your house, your bird house in the right habitat, and you want to have the right size nest hole, which for bluebirds is 1.5 inches. And there's lots of great information on the web about different styles of bluebird houses and sizes, etc. So you can see them. You can see them during the summer. They feed on insects. They're oftentimes perch up, go down to the ground, catch an insect like a grasshopper or a caterpillar, something like that, and come back up. They'll either eat it or they'll bring the insect to their youngsters to feed their young ones. And then come fall, as insects get scarce, they switch their diet to fruit if they're staying around here. They still feed on insects when they get them, but they'll feed on fruit. So if you have a crabapple tree or a bush with small berries still on it, they may come in and feed on those. And sometimes there are berries still hanging on Winterberry, um, which is a shrub that has those bright red berries in the wintertime. It's actually one of the hollies, and they'll come and feed on that in swamp areas, and then get some insects while they can. So you potentially can see them all year round, and we've been seeing their numbers in winter go up and up and up on the Backyard Winter Bird Survey. So celebrating Eastern bluebirds. Yay! All right, let me look at comments, see if we've got any questions. Hi, Susan. Hi, Candy. Oh, what to do about English sparrows? Thanks for that question, Victoria, and I wish I had a great answer for it. I'm struggling with that myself. Um, in my, I have a plot in the community gardens, and I've put up um, boxes for bluebirds and tree swallows, which will use the same size box, and the house sparrows have taken them over. The standard strategy is to clean out the nest as soon as the house sparrow starts building. And that might work if you have just a small population of house sparrows. I've found that to be a challenge out of the gardens because there's a large population of house sparrows. And if you discourage one, another one moves in or it moves to another nest box, and they will kill other nesting birds like the bluebirds and tree swallows that are nesting in boxes. They'll kill the adults, they'll kill the young, they'll pierce the eggs. So they are a real problem if you're trying to um, attract the native birds. And the house sparrows are non-native, and so they kind of outcompete our native birds. I've been looking for solutions myself. There are a couple of things on the web that I found that I have not tried yet. One is an array. It's like a metal little post you put up that extends up above the house with mylar strips that hang down from it. I tried my own homemade version of that with tinfoil and a coat hanger, and it didn't work. But I can't say that it was the best thing in the world either. So I have thought about trying that. There are also traps that you can get um, that that will close on the box when the house sparrow goes in. You put that up early in the season so that it's before the tree swallows or the bluebirds come back, and that can be pretty tough to do. So there's a real challenge there for how to handle house sparrows, but definitely don't let them be successful nesting. So definitely remove their nests. They are not a protected species because they're an introduced species. So removing their nests as soon as they start, they get eggs laid, remove those eggs. Just try and keep them from nesting and discourage them. Let's see. Okay. Oh, hi. All right. Thank you, Victoria. Christy, hi. Christian, thank you from Panama. It's really fun to have somebody from Panama. Christian, maybe you can tell us some of our birds that you're seeing down there. Hi, Bobby. Hi, Deb. And hi, Trish. Thanks for joining me. It's Becky with New Hampshire Audubon. And I apologize if there was any mix-up in the time. We planned to start at 10, and that's the usual starting time, but I noticed that there was a reminder post on Facebook that said 9:30, that I think went, not 9:30, 10:30, and went up yesterday. So I'll definitely be staying on beyond 10:30 for those people who are joining a little bit later. If you have a question, don't hesitate to post it to the comment section. And Victoria, don't worry about bringing up a gloomy subject. That's part of trying to encourage the birds and our native species in New Hampshire. So thank you. I've got some comments coming through my computer screen, others on my phone. So for the most part, I can get comments. And as always, you can message us on Facebook or you can send us an email to birds, etc., BIRDS, at NH And we have crew of volunteer naturalists that will answer your questions. And if they don't know, they'll find out. They're great at figuring things out. So hi again, happy Halloween from the Eastern Bluebird, Becky at New Hampshire Audubon. I want to give you our migration update because some exciting things are happening. It's getting into waterfowl season. So there have been some ducks starting to show up. And when we get rainy weather like we just had yesterday, sometimes it brings ducks down onto the bigger lakes. And Birder was out yesterday and had some good numbers of ducks around. I went out and did not have good numbers of ducks around Concord, but she was a little farther north. And at Webster Lake in Franklin, she had a nice collection of birds. Now, we have birds that we're familiar with, like the mallards and the geese and black ducks, and their numbers can build up. In fact, they're starting to build up now on area lakes and ponds. But then we have others that come through, like ring-necked ducks, and they nest farther north. They're moving through. You can get some big flocks of them, or sometimes just a few. I had 6 on one of the small ponds in Concord yesterday. But then we also have birds which are headed to the coast to winter. And these are waterfowl that breed again much farther north, and then they migrate through all the way to the coast and spend the winter on the ocean. But when we have storms, sometimes we see them down on freshwater lakes. And that happened yesterday. There were some white-winged scoters and surf scoters that were seen on lakes. And then also black scoter is another type of scoter that sometimes you can see in large flocks on lakes when we get some poor weather this time of year. So from now on and into early November or so is the time to look for downed scoters. And then sometimes you can also see red-necked grebes and horned grebes. We had a couple of red-necked grebes reported, but haven't seen the horned grebes yet. And the greater scaup are also starting to move through, and also the little tiny buffleheads. And buffleheads are one of our smallest ducks, if not the smallest. I forgot to look that up. Excuse me. And the male is black and white, and the female is kind of blackish brown, little tint of brown, mostly black, with a little tiny white mark on her head. And they're small ducks, and they also winter on the ocean, like the scoters and the grebes. And they come through, and sometimes they gather on our freshwater lakes. So watch for birds coming through. Loons are also gathering in bigger numbers. We've got loons coming in from farther north, and they'll stay on our lakes. So it's the time to be out looking and watching for waterfowl on lakes and ponds. All right. Hi, Judd. Thanks for joining. Just when I bend down, I'm just checking my phone for comments because it doesn't always come through on my computer screen. I also had my first pine siskin at my feeder today. And again, this is a species from farther north. They breed farther north in the forest areas, and when in the boreal forest up in farther north. And when food supplies are scarce up there, usually birch seed crops, then they move south. And we're seeing quite an influx of them. I've been seeing them around and about, but haven't had them at my feeders until just yesterday. Actually, no, this morning. That's right. It was this morning, just as I was clearing. So if you've got your feeders up, if you're in an area of the state where it's cold enough that the bears have gone into hibernation, and you've got your feeders up, and watch for pine siskins to come to them, and also purple finch. I had my first purple finch at the feeder too. Now, we've talked about the purple finches before. Sorry, I'm just trying to see you all a little better. There we go. Um, and remember, we have purple finch and house finch in the state. And house finch at this point, prior to sort of the last couple of weeks, would be the most common finch that we see. And they're difficult to tell from the purple finch. But if you look at the females, the female purple finch has a white stripe over the eye, and the female house finch has a very plain brown face. So watch for purple finch because they're staging an invasion this year in numbers that we haven't seen for a while. So you might find them coming to your feeders as well. And we don't know whether they'll stay for the fall or whether they'll continue moving farther south or following food supplies. And when it comes to winter, they'll be gone again. So it's time to start thinking about at least about the backyard winter bird survey, which happens in February. You'll hear a lot more about that, but that's part of why I encourage people to take part in the survey because it helps give us information about what's going on. All right, if you have a question, don't hesitate to post it to the comments. And if I seem to have missed it, I don't mind if you post it a second time. Every once in a while, I get involved in what I'm saying and I forget to check the comments and I miss one. So happy to answer any questions. Also, at migration, the sparrows are still around. They'll be clearing out relatively soon. They haven't quite yet. Still lots of white-throated sparrows around. And we have a few late warblers. I actually just saw a very late Tennessee warbler yesterday, right here in Bow, right nearby Concord. And that was a surprise because it's getting late for pretty much all warblers except for yellow-rumped warblers. And so this is a reminder, if you see a late warbler or a late hummingbird, this is a time when we sometimes get vagrants from farther west. And it's worth taking a second look at any late warbler, any late hummingbird, just in case it's one of our rarer species that we might see coming in. And we don't know why the vagrancy happens always, but oftentimes we think that birds which have a compass in their head for migration, that compass gets turned around and they go the wrong direction. So, all right. Oh, Christian's got a couple of comments about birds. Let me see what he's saying. Habitat for native birds. Waves of migrants. Oh, excellent. Black-whiskered vireo. Now, we don't have black-whiskered vireo in New Hampshire. We have red-eyed vireo and blue-headed vireo. Those are the two most common, and warbling vireos are common as well. And then we occasionally have Philadelphia vireo. Scarlet tanager, Swainson's thrush. Those are both birds. Scarlet tanagers all around New Hampshire, and the Swainson's thrush is farther north in the spruce fir forests. And the last couple of days getting more warblers. So the warblers that have left here are finally getting to their wintering grounds in the Caribbean or Central and South America. So that's exciting. And we'll be talking some more about habitat or plant species for migrants so that maybe we can help them along their way. But I'm not going to do that this morning. I've got a different plant I want to chat about. But let me just mention, Victoria mentions dark-eyed Junkos. And yes, the Junkos are coming in much bigger numbers. We're starting to get some flocks of them. Not the huge flocks yet, at least not in the Concord area. But the first ones are coming through, and I've seen flocks of 5 to 10 birds. So we'll definitely be seeing more of Junkos coming. They're one of the quote sparrows. They're in the group of sparrows that actually stays all winter. Some of them go farther south, but some of them do winter here. So that is exciting. Hi, Joanne, and hi, Dale. Thanks for joining. It's Becky with New Hampshire Audubon celebrating Halloween Enchanted Forest in her Bluebird costume, even though we're not doing Enchanted Forest this year because of COVID-19. Okay, that's our migration update. I wanted to mention a feature plant. Hopefully you saw the photos on Facebook that Diane DeLuca took of the witch hazel. And witch hazel is a really fun plant. It's really interesting because it blooms at this time of year in the fall. It's fascinating. There aren't very many plants that do that. And they have the funniest white flowers with these stringy petals. They're bright yellow and they're very pretty. So look for them. I actually have one in my yard. It bloomed just a little bit earlier, but it's a small plant and the leaves turn yellow in the fall. So it's a really pretty landscaping plant. But those fall blooms can provide nectar for late pollinators. And in fact, they actually think that they may bloom in the fall so they have less competition for pollinators. So they're little gnats and bees that pollinate the witch hazel. So if you have one of those in your yard, you can provide nectar for some of our native pollinators with that shrub. And then also fascinating is that they get pollinated, but the fertilization is delayed until the spring. So their fruit ripens in the fall and it blasts open. I haven't seen it do that. At some point, that would be fun. But then the seeds are dispersed and they can provide food for small creatures that eat little seeds. So that's your plant tip for the day. And I encourage you to look at it if you're looking for a small shrub. Sometimes it can grow up into tree size, a small tree, not big tree at all, maybe 10 to 15 feet high. But they also have some cultivars that are smaller ones, and that's what I've got. So take a look at witch hazel, and you can see pictures of it on Facebook on the post that I put up, the photos by Diane. Diane DeLuca is in charge of our pollinator garden, so she's got some great suggestions on plants that can help our native pollinators. All right, just checking for any other questions, comments. Don't hesitate to post them in the Facebook comments, or you can message us on Facebook or send an email to birds@nhaudubon.org. And I'm Becky with New Hampshire Audubon. We will be going definitely beyond 10:30 today because we had a little bit of a mix up in the time postings. So some said it was starting at 10 and some at 10:30. So I'll be sure to continue through 10:30 for anybody who's joining us then. Oh, now I have a bug. So I had mentioned in a couple of Facebook posts before that there was a great sheet put out by the UNH Cooperative Extension that identified bugs that you might commonly find inside your house. And I showed you the Western conifer seed bug. Well, lo and behold, in my house, 2 days ago was another bug that I saw on that information sheet from the UNH Cooperative Extension. So I'm going to try and show it to you. This one's a little more active than the Western conifer seed bug. So I'm hoping that it will stay still long enough for you to see it. Oops, let's see if I can get it. There. Oh, can you see it? So it's black with a little red line on it, on its back. And it is not harmful. It doesn't bite. It's the box elder bug, and it feeds on box elder. which is also called ash leaf maple. That's how I learned it. It's actually a maple, but it has leaves that look like ash leaves. And they have seeds that actually are good for birds. Some birds like to feed on them, but the box elder bug also likes to feed on them. And evidently, it's not common in the state, but we have some in the neighborhood where I live. So there's a box elder bug, and I'm going to put it outside now that I've shown it to you so that it can be outside the house. Evidently, they can gather on the sides of houses in large numbers. I've not seen that and haven't experienced it here. But I was very surprised to have looked at that sheet and then all of a sudden find one of those box elder bugs inside my house. So, all right, if you have a question, don't hesitate to post it up there. Um, all right. One of the other things I promised to talk about was the placement of bird feeders. So there are a variety of bird feeders that I've shown you in the last couple of weeks, and now it's time to think about where the best places to put feeders. So one of the things that birds like when it comes to going to a feeder is they like to have cover nearby. So cover is, bushes, dense bushes, or evergreen shrubs or trees. So they're somewhat uncomfortable flying long ways out in the open. So if you can locate your feeders relatively close, it doesn't have to be right next to them, but maybe 6 to 10 feet from a shrub or a tree, and particularly shrubs or trees that connect to other shrubs and trees. So if you have a big open yard and you have one shrub and the feeder pole set up, and no other shrubs or trees around, that's still very isolating. Whereas if you have a line of shrubs or you can put the feeders somewhat next to some trees, then the birds will be more comfortable going to the feeders. And what things like chickadees do is they're in the tree, they go down to the feeder, grab a seed, and then go back up to the tree and eat it in the tree. Now, of course, there are some birds that land on the feeders and they sit there and eat. And sometimes goldfinch do that, and sometimes housefinch do that, and house sparrows do that as well. Um, so I like to provide the best opportunity I can for all the different birds. So I recommend shrubs and trees somewhat nearby. Now, of course, you don't want the squirrels to be able to jump to your feeder from the trees, so you need to put it far enough away that a squirrel can't jump onto the feeder. If you want to feed the squirrels, that's fine. But if you're aiming for birds and not squirrels, you need some distance there. So that's the main thing. And that's true even if you're providing water, like a bird bath or something like that, to have some cover nearby. Um, that's that most helpful thing. Now, when I scatter seed on the ground, I also scatter it near some shrubs. And this fall, I took a collection of big, dead, really tall sunflower stalks, and I put them upright in my yard in a relatively open area, and then but scattered some seed around it, and that provided actually enough cover as well as food because there were sunflower heads, dead sunflower heads with sunflower seeds in them that the birds would come to. So we'd have the seed, and then we have this cover from all these dense little stalks with the dead leaves on them. That was a great attractant for birds coming in and providing cover at the same time. So that's the main lesson with locating feeders. Now, if you have a pole, um, that's one style. If you want to attach it to a window, something like that, where you can see through and see the windows. Again, if you have a shrub nearby or right underneath or right next to it. Hold on, I got to make sure my bug egg did not escape. Oh, it's trying, but it didn't yet. Sorry. My box elder bug was, I had not put the top on the container, so I just wanted to make sure that it was staying in. Um, So again, a shrub, if you're got a window feeder, a shrub underneath, next to it, or a couple of shrubs would be really helpful, and helpful if you can provide some other connecting shrubs or a tree nearby. If you don't have shrubs, you can also put up an old Christmas tree. And that's one of the things I do with my Christmas tree. When it's done, I put it on my porch. I have a back deck, and there's not much cover near that back deck. And I put that tree there to provide some cover for birds to come in. They still like the bigger natural shrubs better, but it will help them come in. And if you want to, you can put up you can sort of rope together several different Christmas trees, several of them, and create sort of a little dense patch of evergreen temporarily in the wintertime near your feeders. All right, so thanks to those who have joined. This is Becky with New Hampshire Audubon. I know we had a little mix up in time, so I'm going beyond 10:30 and have a couple of other fun things to share with you. We did start at 10, but I'm glad that you're able to join. And hi to Bill and Joanne and to Margaret and Bye. Thanks for joining. And Dale, hi to everybody. I really appreciate you joining me. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to put a comment in Facebook, and I'll take a look at it. And again, you can message us on Facebook, or you can send an email to New Hampshire Audubon, birds, etc., at nhaudubon.org. It's Happy Halloween. Becky in her Eastern Bluebird costume, reminding us of New Hampshire Audubon's Enchanted Forest, which usually happens at this time of year when we don't have COVID-19 pandemic going on. But it's a fun time when creatures of the wild can come alive in our enchanted forest. And the bluebird has been a character in a number of skits in our enchanted forests. So I hope that you will join us in the future when that event returns. So happy Halloween coming up on Saturday. And let me mention a couple of other things I wanted to let you know. Oh, I knew there was something that I had bumped into that I thought was really interesting. So one of the bird clubs in Massachusetts, the Brookline Bird Club, had a free online presentation for their annual meeting by Donald Kreutzma. And Donald Kreutzma is an expert in bird song. He's written a number of books that are very enjoyable, and he knows a lot. He's studied the sonograms, and he knows a lot about bird songs, and he watches them and can figure out what's happening, and it's really fascinating. And he had some information in this presentation that I did not know. So I wanted to share it with you because it was just kind of surprising. So we have birds called European starlings. They aren't native birds. They're non-native birds that were introduced here in the US in around the 1800s. And they can be a problem because they're cavity nesters and they can outcompete our native birds. By the way, that's why you want 1.5 inch hole for your bluebird boxes, because it's too small for European starlings to get into. The introduced house sparrow can still get in, but the European starlings cannot. But European starlings are mimics. And as with our passerine birds, they have 2 voice boxes. And they can do imitations of 2 different birds at the same time. And Donald Kreutzma had a recording of a starling doing these different mimics, and it mimicked the eastern phoebe and the northern flicker doing this and this for their 2 different voice boxes. But at the same time, it sang a eastern phoebe, 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 and the flicker call, both at once. And I was actually shocked. I had not heard that before, and it made me think that I'm going to have to pay a little bit more attention when I hear a bird song in the background. with all these other noises going on to make sure that it's not something like a starling mimicking something like a phoebe. That phoebe call carries a long ways, and it's easy to think, oh, there's a phoebe singing over at that nearby building. Well, now I'm going to have to pay a little more attention to that. And another thing he taught me was that female cardinals sing on the nest. And they'll sing back and forth with their mate. Now, I did not know that female cardinals could sing. And actually, he talked about female singing and the fact that, yes, some females do sing. We don't always know how many different species have females that sing, because unless you have color bands and have sexed the bird that you've put the color bands on, you can't tell whether the male or the female is singing when the male and female look alike. Now, with cardinals, the male and the female look different, so you can tell when the female is singing. But if the male and the female look the same, you can't tell unless you can identify them individually with color bands. And if the bird looks the same, it can be challenging to identify male or female unless you have something like a blood test. Um, so that was something that was really, really surprising for me. I thought that's worth thinking about. The rose-breasted grosbeak, both male and female, also sing while they're incubating, but she's much quieter and not as forceful and clear. The male's got a real forceful, clear song. It's kind of like a robin song, burbly song, and she's not as forceful like that, but she does sing while she's incubating. Now, great horned owls, they're not passerines. They're in a group of birds, the non-passerines, but both the male and the female hoot. So if you're listening to them, sometimes they do a duet, and the male is actually a lower pitch than the female. So when you're listening and hearing two different pitches of great horned owls, then the higher one is the female, the lower one is the male. So I encourage you to take a look and do a little Google search online or pick up one of Don Kuzma's books to learn some more about birdsong, because he talks a lot about the birdsong in relation to behavior. So not just how to identify the birds, but what might be going on when they're singing. And that can be really, really fascinating. There's the northern mockingbirds, which are mimics, will song match each other. So one mockingbird, male mockingbird, may be singing, and he'll do one mimic, and another male mockingbird in the area will do the same mimic. So they'll match each other's songs. That's fascinating. So it's quite a wide world of birdsong out there. And Donald Kuzma is somebody who's studied it, these different nuances, not just how to identify the birds. So enjoy it. Patricia has got a tip. Leave the leaves on the lawn until spring. Yes. Yes, I'm glad you like my bluebird costume too. I actually have to give some credit to this bluebird costume to one of my volunteers, Diana, who put the reddish material on the front and made it look a little bit more like a bluebird. So thanks to Diana for this costume. Yes, leaves can be a great source of insects. They keep moisture in, and even if you don't want to leave the leaves on your lawn, you can rake them under shrubs or trees, and that will hold in the moisture and the insects and provide a place for birds to feed. Like robins will come along and they'll root through. They don't root through. They use their bill to sort of flip the leaves and find the insects. Uh, and because it keeps in moisture, it can also be a place where they can find worms when it's a little drier. So yes, leaving leaves out is a great thing to do. And again, it's Becky with New Hampshire Audubon. Thank you so much for joining me. I apologize for any mix-up in the time. We started at 10 o'clock, and I'm continuing a little longer because I know some people may have seen the start time as 10:30. So if you have any questions or comments, um, don't hesitate to put a comment in, or you can message us on Facebook or send an email to birds etc. BIRDS ETC @nhaudubon.org. And if you've seen an interesting bird, don't hesitate to share it with all the rest of us. All right. Patricia, thank you for that comment about the leaves. This is the time of year when I actually go out collecting leaves because I've got a lot of new shrubs that I've put in my yard, and they don't have a well-developed root system yet. So I mulch them with leaves for the plant's sake to help keep the weeds down, to keep the moisture in, and it also serves to provide the insect source for food, insect food source for birds. Some of the plants that I have in are small shrubs that I'm hoping are going to grow up to produce berries for birds. And some of them are also pollinator plants. And so we'll be talking some more about different plants that can be good plants in your yard. And one of the ones that's still in leaf right now is my bayberry. And bayberries produce the little bayberries, the little waxy berries that yellow-rumped warblers will eat at this time of year when they're coming through. It's a little colder and there aren't as many insects around. So the yellow-rumped warblers is one of our latest warblers that comes through. So sometimes they get some particularly cold weather. And in areas on the coast, usually a little farther south from us, they will actually winter over if there's a supply of bayberries and poison ivy berries. They'll also eat poison ivy berries. I'm not going to encourage that in my yard, as you can imagine. But areas out in the wild that have poison ivy can provide food for our migrating yellow-rumped warblers. All right. Well, has anybody got any other questions or anything else they want to share? We'll go continue to do our live Facebook. I'll have a couple of other things next week that I want to talk about. I heard a great migration story that I want to share with you. So I will do that next week. We can look forward to it. Again, it's Becky with New Hampshire Audubon. And are there any other questions? I know there's a little bit of a delay between when I actually talk and when you actually get to hear it. So I like to give a moment for people to send any other questions or comments that they might have. As I'm sure you all know, this video is live right now, but available at any time on Facebook after we're completed, and will eventually be up on New Hampshire Audubon's YouTube channel. Thanks very much for joining me today. I am with New Hampshire Audubon. I'm a biologist with New Hampshire Audubon. We are an independent nonprofit organization. That means we're not affiliated with National Audubon. So we hope that you will join us. We are committed to the protection of habitat for wildlife and for people. And we hope that you will join us by becoming a member or making a contribution. You can visit our website and do both of those. So thank you very much for joining me. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to send a message to Facebook or an email to birds etc. @nhaudubon.org. And let me just note that Victoria has another tip here before we sign off. Bluebirds love her clothesline, which is close to several nest boxes. Heavy bamboo canes around the yard. Make good use of those for insect searching. Yes. So One of the things about bluebirds, yay, bluebirds, is that they oftentimes they like a perch, which they can watch for insects lower on the ground and then drop down to the ground, come back up. So if you want to attract bluebirds and you have a big open field yard area, you've got your nest box up, you might want to try putting up some perch poles. And bamboo canes is one, or just a post with a cross piece on it. Actually, probably just a post is fine for a little bluebird. Um, and dotted in different places. Or you can put up a couple of posts that stretch a line between it, like Victoria's um, clothesline, and they'll land on that. And when the young ones fledge, they often stay together as a group. So you can end up with a whole little family group dotted along the line, sitting there. And the young might stay put while the adults bring them food, because the adults will continue to feed them after they fledge for quite a while before they start another brood, if they've got time for another brood. So that can be a great suggestion, is to put up perches. And that can also work for raptors. And I'm actually going to try it at the community gardens. I already have one perch up. But there was a immature red-tailed there earlier this fall that was feeding heavily in the gardens. We have quite a high population of voles this year in the garden. Not moles with an M, but voles with a V for victory, or for very pesky. Um, they're small brown rodents with a tail, cute little button eyes. They're actually really cute little animals, but they really like root vegetables, so they devoured all of my beets. They didn't find the carrots, so I got those. They devoured nearly all my white potatoes, but they didn't find the sweet potatoes, so I did get some of those. So those of us who are gardeners get very frustrated with voles. And I thought I need to put up a couple of raptor perches for owls and hawks that might be able to perch on them and then watch for the voles and help me with some vole control in the garden. I'm also trying to figure out how I can provide a good wintering spot, hibernation spot for snakes, so that things like garter snakes can come and prey on the young voles and help me with the vole control in that way. Little natural predator control here. So thank you again. Barb, thank you for joining, and Patricia and Carol. I think we will wrap it up here. Again, I apologize for any confusion on the time. I usually start at 10 o'clock. We had the incorrect time of 10:30 posted. So I apologize to those of you who missed that sort of first half hour, but it's always available on video. So join me anytime. Have a happy Halloween. Watch for bluebirds, they're still around. And enjoy the birds outside in your yard or wherever you may be, including in Panama. Thanks for that report, Christian. Keep sending it along. We'd like to hear about our birds down there. Thanks a lot. Have a good one. Bye-bye.